everybody, welcome back to our Liberty House. My name is Beth and my husband Lucas is behind the camera today. And today I'm going to be walking you through our garden here in January in Zone 9B, which is Sacramento, California for us. January is definitely the slower time for gardening in general, but there's still a lot to talk about and a lot to show you guys. There's still a lot of exciting things happening too. We're growing things from like Napa Cabbage to Bok Choy. I'm going to be showing you our garlic, leeks, and onions, as well as a few other things. If you've noticed, we have been doing about a garden tour every month. So if you want to catch up, be sure to check out our channel and look at all of the garden tours we've posted in the last few months. And you'll kind of see the progression of all of our winter gardening up to this point. Let's go check it out. All right, let's get started. So if you've seen my videos before, I always start on the far right of kind of our garden space in this bed right here, and I'm just going to walk you through and tell you kind of everything we have growing and if there's anything interesting going on here. But we have our couple perennial herbs in this bed. We have oregano here and thyme back there. This time of year they're getting pretty big, which is great. We've been harvesting some to use in the kitchen and then really just been kind of trimming it to not take over the garden bed, because it will if you let it. Come springtime, when we're ready to start planting, we'll really cut these back quite a bit to make room for summer garden vegetables. But right now we're just letting them thrive and grow. Also in this bed, we have one purple bok choy left. We harvested one already, so this one's pretty well ready to get harvested here. She's looking pretty good. And then I'm gonna let you guys know, I was looking at this earlier and I have no idea what this is. Does anyone else plant things and then forget because I didn't mark it? So if this looks familiar to you, let me know in the comments, please. Here we have Napa Cabbage, also called Chinese Cabbage. This is our first year growing Napa Cabbage, and they were so easy to grow. I highly recommend if you're in our zone. You can see this one on the right is fully mature. She is ready to go and get harvested. This one here is not quite as big. She gets a little bit more shade, I'm assuming, because they were planted at the same time, which is kind of interesting. And this one you can see too has kind of been munched on a bit by different caterpillars or even slugs I've seen around. Which is no big deal. It's just part of the garden, I guess. But when you wash it, you make sure there's no bugs in there. But yeah, highly recommend growing those. Over here, this purple stuff, that's actually mustard. Last year, this entire bed was full of mustard greens, and these just must have been seeds that lingered, and we just kept them. And then over here, this is actually broccoli raw that it bolted, and I'm just letting it kind of do its thing. So some hummingbirds and bees and those pollinators have something to eat on. Here's that thyme. Again, it's just huge. I need to trim that, and we just dry it out for herbs through the year. And then right here, these are all of our onions. So we planted a couple different varieties of onions. These are the red onions that we planted from little seed starts. So you'll see they're actually looking pretty good, I think. And then this is actually a rutabaga or a sunflower. It's kind of grew a sunflower here at the bottom, but that's a perennial too. So after summer, I just kind of whacked it back and then just letting it hang out until next year. And then in our garden this year, we planted 2 different types of leeks. This is our first year growing leeks as well, so I'm really excited to see how these turn out. This leek is one that we got as a start, so they're a little bit bigger than the ones in the bed next to me that I'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, we have a few that I think are looking pretty darn good. Leeks take quite a while to grow. I think they're about 9 months. So we have quite a bit of time left on those leeks. And over here in this bed to my left are the leeks that we started from seed. So you can tell they're quite a bit smaller, which is totally fine, but they're going to grow and be nice and big too. right here, I started to mound the dirt a bit. Since I started these from seed, leeks really like to be planted really, really deep into the soil. That's what's going to get you the big white chunky stalks that are delicious on leeks. So I read some stuff and saw some things, and people just said if you didn't plant them deep, and I didn't because these were started from seed, you can just come back and start mounding up the soil. So I don't know if you can tell, but this, I just kind of added some dirt here to cover up the stalks just a little bit more, and I might continue to do that a little bit more as they get a little bit bigger. Also in this bed, I think this is a rogue carrot actually, I'm just kind of letting it go. I have a gomphrena plant here that pretty much dried out. It was from last summer, but I just kind of whacked it back, and I'm just going to see if it stays alive until spring and might get another harvest out of the flowers. And here, kind of something interesting. So we planted quite a bit of cauliflower this year, and this one, I planted these at the exact same time, but what's interesting is this one decided to go to flower pretty early. This is looking really, really good. A nice tight head. Not quite big enough to where I want to harvest it yet, but I kept this one around just because I wanted to show you guys what it looks like when it starts to bolt or go to seed. It kind of separates and then it'll flower. But I'm not exactly sure why this one decided to bolt and this one didn't, which is interesting because usually plants start to bolt at the end of their life, right? So I'm almost wondering if this just didn't get enough sun, so it thought that it was dying and decided to go to seed to try to rejuvenate itself or become reborn into the soil. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I also want to share with you guys, in our zone 9B, this time of year, especially getting into February, next month, we are going to start seeing more and more warm days and sunny days. And that cauliflower does not like the sun or too much heat or too much sun. So what a lot of people do, because I think next week's actually, we're going to get kind of a warm spell here in Sac, is they'll kind of tie up its own leaves like this using clothespins or maybe like a loose hair tie or rubber band, because that is going to kind of hide the I want to say it's a fruit, but it's not a fruit, the cauliflower itself, to help prevent it from bolting like this one. So that's kind of a little tip I might try this coming week as the temperatures start to increase, because I think we're going to have a whole week like where it's hitting 60, like low to mid 60s every day. So I want to make sure that I can harvest this little guy. Also in this bed, we have 2 more Napa cabbages. So we have a lot of lettuce and cabbage coming our way here soon. I also have another perennial flower similar to the gomphrena. So this is a floss flower, also called an agerton, that I kind of just whacked back, and it had a little bit of frost damage, which I cut back just a bit because it's still pretty healthy here at the base. But yeah, I kind of just cut some of that back a bit, and I'm just going to see if it survives because I can't, it's a little too early to start planting anything else. So might as well just see what happens there. So right here is just a green onion that we harvest every once in a while. It's kind of a cut and come again. And then here, as we continue on the journey of my garden, is our arched trellis bed. This was the one we had just talked about. And then we have this side too, but first I'm going to talk about all the peas we have growing. Lucas and I actually just harvested a whole bunch of these this morning. You can see a few of them got a little bit of frost damage, but the peas themselves are still going to be totally fine. So, and we do still have quite a few growing on the vines themselves. So we're just going to let those get a little bit bigger since we're kind of growing these just for shelling purposes. So that is what we are going to do. And back here in one of our raised beds, we are growing some kale. which has been pretty delicious, actually. I never thought I'd be one to enjoy kale as much as I am, but homegrown kale is delicious, and it's really good to put into smoothies. And then these are some violas. I started from seed. Something's been eating this little guy. And here's just another flower. I honestly don't remember what it is, but yeah, it looks like it's gonna start blooming soon. So maybe I'll find out by our next video. And here in the gutters are some dead strawberries, which we'll probably, what I have been doing the last few years is just going through and kind of cutting off the dead because it's still alive in there. But I'm gonna wait a little bit longer until our frost date passes, just to make sure I don't get rid of all of these leaves, leaving just the healthy ones. And then if we have another frost, all of these leaves might get damaged. So these are kind of offering a little bit of protection to the plant itself. So I'm not going to do much with that for probably another month. And we have some trailing rosemary here. We really don't eat this, but I love it because it's really pollinator friendly with these little flowers. I actually saw a hummingbird in here earlier, which was really fun. So rosemary grows really, really well in our zone. So yeah, that's what's going on in the arch. And in front of this bed, we do have some perennial flowers. So this is cyclamen, which is a flower that blooms all winter long here in Sacramento or Zone 9. It's fun because this actually was one I planted over a year ago, and I just kept it alive, watering it here and there, but it just started blooming probably in December and has rebloomed since it bloomed the first time. So that's really fun. Right behind it, I planted some cilantro from seed, which is doing pretty well. We ate some the other night and it was so good. And here in this bed, we have some more herbs. This is sage right here. So another cut and come again type herb. And as we move along, this bed still has some Brussels sprouts growing. So if you've talked a little bit about this on Instagram, but there are those delicious Brussels sprouts. Not super big. Let's see if I can get my camera to focus. But definitely the best of the 3 stalks we have going. So we may harvest that soon. And then here's the other one. This is actually a twin plant. So we bought this from a starter at the nursery, and I tried to separate them, but their roots were just so entangled. I could not get them to separate without destroying both plants. So I just decided to plant them both, and they're actually doing okay. This one's not quite as mature as its twin over here, but still pretty cool. And then we got one back here that's really not doing much, just little babies. But I think this one especially has been shaded out a little bit more, especially this broccoli we just harvested last week. So I don't think it's gotten quite as much sun as these two over here. And then we have more cauliflower. Look how small this one is. It's so cute. So yeah, again, I might just cover up some of those plants, or cover up the plant with its leaves. Here's another cauliflower that hasn't even started to produce its head. But again, this side of the bed in the winter is like full shade. It really doesn't get much sun at all. And here we got some dill. So another good cut and come again herb. I always wish we could plant dill here in the summer when we plant cucumbers, because we like pickles, but it doesn't work that way. So we will probably just cut this and dry it, or at the end of the season, because it really doesn't survive our summers here very well. And back here's a little bit more of that floss flower or agertim I've kind of just let grow. And that's it for our 3 main beds. Let's now walk down our garden a bit. We have a bed here kind of central in our garden. This is where we planted all of our garlic this year. So we planted this, I should ask Lucas, I think about 2 months ago. It was probably, actually maybe more than that, 3 months in October, I want to say. But they are looking really good. These are elephant garlic. So if your garlic doesn't look quite as chunky as these ones, it's probably just the variety. Elephant garlic gets pretty big. If you remember our harvest from last year, I love growing elephant garlic. It's not quite as garlicky as smaller heads of garlic or other varieties. But it's just so fun to grow because the bulbs are like baseballs or softballs. They're gigantic. And here down the center, we have more onions. These are all onions. These are more red onions, it looks like. And when Lucas planted these, he kind of mounded it as well. So onions and leeks both like kind of mounding soil. And same with garlic, really. Just so it gives that bulb a place to get pretty big. So that is good. I think this is just some flowers that self-started. Almost looks like larkspur, but I'm not 100% sure. And oddly enough, you might notice some of these elephant garlics are quite a bit smaller than the other ones. I have no idea why it does this, to be honest, but it did this last year where some of them were just slow to grow, and while others, like that one back there, move my hand so it focuses, is pretty big. But by the end of the year, by the end of the season, the growing season for them, like in June when we go to harvest these, they'll all be fully mature. So I'm not too concerned about it. It's just kind of a weird thing, especially because this side gets so much more sun. I would expect this side to be bigger than this side, but who knows. And back here we have really big cauliflowers, and by really big I mean they're just way leafier. So yeah, these are looking pretty good too. These will be much easier to cover up when it gets a little bit sunnier out. Okay, and then we have Lisa, our lemon tree. She is looking pretty good. We harvested some lemons last week, and we have a few more to harvest. We'll probably harvest them here in the next week or so, just to let her start thinking about next season. Lemons and limes really have a pretty short time between when you harvest the fruit and when they start setting buds for the following year. So the window to prune them is very, very short. And we pruned Lisa quite a bit last year. So we may prune her some more this year. Just kind of, I don't know if you can see, like this one branch is like going in between that other branch and it has fruit on it. So we left it this year. But once we harvest that fruit, we'll probably start pruning just a little bit. She's doing pretty good. So that's Lisa. And as we keep walking, we have our 4 tree boxes. So in this first one, we have more kale, which are just looking really good. Kale actually gets pretty tall as you harvest it. It kind of grows like a tree. So I think they're really pretty. And underneath them, we have more of that viola. I really like to intermix my flowers with my vegetables just to promote beneficial insects. Here's another one of those rudbeckias, just super weird. It's a perennial, so I just left it, but it's just has a flower there at the base. It didn't really grow a stem. And this back here, this is a broccoli rabe. So the leaves, I kind of forgot what these were until Lucas told me. And I totally forgot that we picked some up at the nursery as like an impulse buy and planted them. So yeah. That's broccoli rabe, first time growing. We had planted some beans, if you remember, back in, I think, October. Not a great, we didn't harvest any of those beans. We planted a couple runner beans here and some beans there, but they all died of frost, including all the ones we planted back here, unfortunately. But I'm not super upset about it. We're going to try beans again this spring. And, if anything, those beans help the soil quite a bit. They're just full of nitrogen and they give nitrogen back to the soil. So even though we didn't get to harvest those beans, we are able to just let them go back into the soil and feed our soil a bit. One other thing, I haven't moved from this box yet, but we did plant some beets. I don't know why we have been struggling with beets the last few years. I think we might get a few, but we'll see. One of these days we will be successful in our beet growing. Here's some more of that broccoli rabe over here. We don't have anything planted right here. There's a random cauliflower back there. And then this is kind of the sad cemetery of all of the beans that we planted that died of frost. What we're gonna do is I'm not gonna pull these out. I'm just gonna dig them kind of lightly back into the soil when we go to plant for the spring. There's a squirrel digging. Anyone else battle squirrels? And then over here, this is all of our lettuces. So we have some arugula, romaine. I don't remember what this is. There's another cauliflower. I told you we planted a lot of cauliflower. I'm not sure why we planted so much. That's arugula. I felt like there was another variety, but maybe it's just arugula. Oh, some butter crunch. This is the butter crunch. So those are doing good. These monsters this is borage. I'm been wanting to grow borage for a while, and I have another plant on the other side of the yard that's huge. I'm going to show you here in a minute. But borage, when it flowers, is so great for your pollinators. And it's growing pretty well back here too. And then way back here, I've got some dead leaves I should pull. We have some radishes growing. I can show you there. Yeah. So those root crops do pretty well during the winter. So that's pretty much it. We got our blueberries. This is where we had planted our Jerusalem artichokes. They're still buried here in the soil. We just kind of come out here and grab some when we want to eat them, but they survive just fine there, and they'll regrow next year when the weather warms up. And then let me walk you down and around and show you Leonardo, our lime tree. We have harvested all of the limes already. He is looking pretty good. Here is our pile of rose clippings, which if you remember, we have a bunch of roses here along the backside of our house. That this time of year, if you haven't yet, is a great time to pull and cut or prune your roses. I can't talk. And then this right here, this is Alfonso, our avocado tree. He is looking so good. Look at that new growth happening. Still have not gotten an avocado. Don't know if we ever will, but it's exciting to just have an avocado tree. And back here, this is our fig tree. I don't think we've named this one yet. But maybe when we plant it in the ground, which we really need to before it gets too warm, we'll give her a name. So if you have any good names, let me know. And back here is our last garden bed. This one gets the best sunlight here in the winter. We've jokingly talked about kind of expanding the garden to the side of the yard because it just gets really great sun, but that's a lot of work. I don't know if we'll do it or not. But here's a broccoli rabe. This one is the best of those just because it does get such good sun. Look at that. We have not harvested any of it yet, but we should soon because I want to try it out. And then back here, this is a Bok Choy. Do you guys remember when I showed you these that I thought were dead a few months ago? It obviously survived. It is so big. It's honestly probably going to be really bitter because it got so big. But we may harvest it We keep saying we're going to harvest it and then we forget. So that's okay. We have a Brussels sprout here. I don't think this is going to do anything. But truthfully, we're okay. You know, it's not solely about successful vegetable growing. Sometimes in the winter, you just want to have things in the soil because that really helps your soil health for the summer growing season. So we try to not stress at all in the winter about anything that we're growing. It's purely just relaxing gardening. These are more cauliflower. Can you believe it? We have that much cauliflower. No heads yet on these, but they're really, really tall. It's honestly, they're probably competing for some of this light because look at this borage. I wasn't joking when I told you it was really freaking big. But here's what the flowers look like. And look how big this stalk is. Like, it's like the size of my wrist. Look at it. It kind of just like toppled over. I don't know if I can get my camera in there for you guys. But there's a couple plants. I just kind of scattered seeds. I didn't realize they would get this big. So it is what it is. But the flowers are quite pretty, and I think the bees are going to be really, really happy come springtime when they start to emerge a little bit more and become more active, because it's really important to have some flowers if you're gardening early in the season to help keep those bees alive, because you need those bees in the summer. And if there's nothing for them to eat early on, they will either die or move somewhere else. So definitely start thinking about planting some annual flowers that grow decently early on, and that's going to help you with your summer garden. Here's another broccoli rabe. We honestly, like this winter or in the fall, we kind of really intermixed our plants. We often plant like all of our broccoli together, all of our cauliflower together. And this season, we really just kind of played around with just moving them kind of all over the place. So last thing I'm going to talk about is this passion fruit vine. She is so big. She needs to get trimmed a bit. I've kind of thought about maybe arching this and letting her trail a little bit more. But you might notice she got a little frost damage. And Lucas and I talked about, we eventually will cut some of that damaged foliage off, but we decided to leave it for now until the last frost date has passed in our zone, which should be, in the next month-ish. Because right now, even though that damaged leaves might not be helping the plant itself, it is helping in the sense that it's going to protect the leaves underneath it from getting frost. Because the last thing we want is to kind of thin it out and then have another hard frost where it gets damaged again and it might kill the whole plant. So that is kind of our strategy there. Got nasturtiums kind of growing wild. Here's a look at, this is some lemon balm right here. You can see it's starting to kind of try to shoot some runners out. So I have to kind of stay on top of that. Here's one of our roses that we cut back. Here's a citronella plant. Here is our one of our climbing roses. So we have a whole video on how to prune back your roses to have a really successful rose season. So check that out. I will link it right here and in the description below. Here's our other rose. And then this is the rosemary we eat off of. She is this huge bush. Holy cow, I need to trim it because she's going to take over pretty soon. So that's pretty much it with the garden tour this January. It's starting to get really sunny out. Today's going to be a really nice day. So thank you guys so much for tagging along. This was a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Follow us on Instagram. That is where we hang out most of the time. And if you're getting ready to start a garden, we are going to be putting out a video here soon all about kind of how to start your first garden. And then in the next few weeks, probably more into February, we're going to be doing a lot of content on our seed starting setup and how Lucas and I start planning for our summer garden here in Zone 9. So make sure you're subscribed if you're interested in any or all of that. And if you know of any gardeners here in this zone, please share our channel with them. So thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the month.